All right, everyone who watches this video, I am going to share something that may be unpopular, but I don't care. I'm going to share it anyway. Now, this is something that when I discovered it myself, I was shocked. Okay, so I totally get where you're coming from if you think that what I'm saying sounds crazy, but it may sound crazy, but it makes a lot of sense, and now we'll go through that. So, in one of my other videos, I talked about what's his face? What's that dude's name? With the lies you tell at work. I don't know, whatever his name is. One of the things that he said was the way that we give feedback or the way that we use feedback is misleading, because you cannot give somebody feedback, right? Not the way that we think, we're doing. So what he said is, Marcus Buckingham, that's his name. What he said was, the only thing you can do is to describe your response to what somebody did. Y'all remember that from the video? If not, go look at the video. All you can do is describe your response. So when I'm sitting down with you as you're my supervisor and you're giving me feedback about my performance, what you're doing is you're telling me how you are responding to the way that I'm performing. Okay, so the feedback is about you, not me. It's about you, your perspective, the filter you have, how you're taking certain things, the way you're interpreting stuff. All of that is about you. All right. Now, another thing that goes with that, I told you also in the same video how I talked to somebody who was creating a coaching program. And you don't evaluate coaching the same way you evaluate other types of learning and development. Okay. So one thing I said in our conversation is, you cannot evaluate a person, right? I said you can judge them till the cows come home, but you cannot evaluate a person. And it's in the same stream of thought as what Buckingham is saying about you cannot give feedback. It's for that same reason. All right. Now, hold on a second. Just, bear with me. One thing we love and we are holding on to for dear life, like there's a shark in the water and you holding on to this thing, and if you let go, the shark is going to eat you. We hold on to this for dear life, and that is using learner feedback to rate the instructor. We got to stop doing that. Okay, using the learner feedback to say whether or not the instructor is good or bad or engaging or all this, and then we base how we rate the performance or whether or not we use the instructor again or whatever on that feedback. Okay, so then you say, well, what am I supposed to use? What am I going to do? Right? Just hold on a second. Now, I don't want to, it's not just Cheryl saying this. Okay, all you got to do, if you have Google or any search engine, type in learner feedback and assessing teacher performance. There are years and years and years and years of evidence that says, I'm gonna quote something right now, and I'm gonna put this link underneath the video so you can go to it. In one study that was done, I think it was 2016 or 2017, and this is just one of hundreds, okay? There is strong evidence that student responses to questions of effectiveness do not measure teaching effectiveness. They don't measure that, okay? This is a really good study too. So what do you do? Okay, so here I am, a facilitator, an educator, a teacher, or whatever, standing in front of people, providing them information. And I want to know whether or not, I'm doing what I'm up there to do. I need some water. So what do I do instead? Well, this goes to affective context. I talk about this too I think it was in my last video. Affective context. So that's about the learner creating, or the instructor creating an environment or creating the conditions for learning, right? The way you've designed your critical thinking intervention, the way you've designed it is you are soliciting certain responses from the learners, okay? So say, for example, one of the responses that you want is inquisitiveness. You want people to be curious about something, so what are they going to do? They're going to be asking questions, right? They're going to be looking for information. You want them to inquire about what's going on. That's something that you design into the program. Empathy. You want them to be able to experience something, outside of what they typically experience, so that the response you get is empathy, right? They're sharing in somebody's perspective and experience. Possibly energy. You're designing energy into it. So the response you're going to get is mental and physical energy, that's going to be used to produce something, right? What are they producing in the class, right? So then what you're evaluating is the response. Am I getting the response that I've designed into this learning event? Now, we don't even look at that, right? We don't look at response. What we look at is we write objectives, right? And we want to say, okay, did you meet these objectives? I'm not saying don't use objectives. You can. I mean, you don't have to. You really don't have to. But I know that most of us use them. So, so that's what we do. And that's how we determine whether or not what we're doing is effective. That's how we determine whether or not, the teacher or the instructor is effective, if the learner met those objectives. But let me tell you, I wrote in my book, Longing to Learn, okay, here in chapter 1 in the introduction, just real quick, I say, heuristic work is the opposite of algorithmic. Heuristic workers have no clear, predetermined path. This type of work requires minds that question, evaluate, experiment, assess information, make decisions. Heuristic workers are free, challenged, intrinsically rewarded, and are impossible to replace. You just do what you're told to do, basically, okay? Now, the same thing should be happening in the learning environment, right? What you're doing and what I do when I create objectives, because I still create objectives, for some of my learning interventions. What that is that's like a barrier. An objective is a barrier. An objective is it's a limit. Okay? So what I'm saying to you is I've designed this thing to help you reach this target. And most of the time, if not for some of us, all of the time, all we're evaluating is whether or not that target was reached. And that's success if you reach that target. Now, I have to tell you, I did a video very early on about 4 of the courses that I've taken that I really enjoyed. Okay, and I got a lot out of them. I used it in my work and all kind of wonderful things. And one of those was a course that I took on knowledge risk with management concepts, right? I said I was the only one like me in that course. Everybody else was financial. Everybody else was financial. Nobody in there was in learning and development, because it was about auditing and, all this other stuff, but I need in financial risk, but I wanted to know more about knowledge risk, which is a part of my evaluation framework. So I don't remember what all the objectives are, but what I do know is that I didn't reach any of them. Okay, I didn't. But like I said in that video, that was one of the most influential courses that I took. Why? Because the way I responded to that information, first of all, I was pulling that information, right? Nobody was shoving it, telling me I have to learn this or whatever, right? I went to that course because I knew that I needed it. I knew that I wanted that information. So that's the first thing, okay? I was pulling that information because I needed it right then and there to help me do these various tasks that I wanted to do. So that's the first thing, right? The second thing is that the way I was responding. So if the instructor would have asked, about my responses, I was very curious. As he was talking, I was, on Google, like looking up various words because I didn't know what the words were, and I needed to understand them, to keep up, right? Which was good. So I was learning vocabulary as I was in there. That was not one of the objectives, to learn vocabulary, about auditing. That was not what that was, but that's what was happening with me. I was also asking a lot of questions. I was asking for metaphors because that's the way I think, right? I it's easier for me to understand something if you put it in a metaphor than just coming straight at me, and doing that. And that's how I tend to explain things too. I was also surprised by some things. I remember something that I found out. I was like, man, I didn't even know this existed. The financial report for the agency that I was in, and it had all this information that I didn't even know this thing existed. I was so excited about it that I made an email right there in the class, and I sent it to my supervisor, and I said, hey, look at this thing. It looks like it might be relevant for what we're doing in one of our projects, right? So to me, if I would have been asked, Cheryl, how did you respond to the way this course, this learning event was designed? Well, I can tell you, these are the things that I did. And what that also does is what you're evaluating then, you're not evaluating the instructor, you're not evaluating the person. What you're evaluating is the design. The design of the learning event is what you're evaluating. You're evaluating the processes, right? You're evaluating the materials. You can absolutely do that, right? Everything that comes together to make that learning event, the processes within there, within the event, right? You can evaluate that all day, right? Because now, not only, you're asking me these questions about how I'm responding, and there are other types of questions as well. But how am I responding to this design? You're not just asking me, you're seeing it, right? So it's objective information too. It's not just me telling you, how honest I think the instructor was or whatever. You don't know that. I gotta be lying. I'm just trying to get this thing done so I can get my certificate, right? But when you evaluate my response to the design, that's something you can see, right? In the evaluation model, I call that proof of work, right? It's proof of mental and physical energy being used to produce something, being used to produce questions, used to produce, tangible and traceable artifacts, right? You can see that. So you don't even have to give me a survey. You can see that for yourself. You can see what's going on, right? And get objective evidence of it. So that's we have to think of other ways. We can't keep ignoring the research, okay? That's telling us having the learner evaluate the effectiveness of the instructor is not reliable. That's not valid. They can't do it, okay? That's not what that's for. When you ask me those type of questions as well. Now, one thing that my hypnosis teacher told me was that, and I loved it when he said this, because I told him about the work that I do and stuff like that, right? And he said because he was in learning too, but before he became a hypnotist. So one thing he said was evaluation questions shouldn't just be there to get information from me, okay? I should be able to get something out of that, right? I'm providing, this is my information. I am providing this valuable information that you're going to use for your business purposes or whatever, right? What am I getting out of it, right? What am I getting out of providing you this valuable information so that you can go on and do things with it, okay? Think about how if you have loyalty cards. So I have a loyalty card for Giant where I go make my groceries sometimes. Giant don't care about my loyalty. They want my information, right? They want to know, what groceries am I buying? When am I buying it? How much am I willing to spend? How often do I go in and buy that same product? They want to share that with their suppliers, right? That's what they want, my information, because they use that information. It's valuable to them, right? It's money making to them, okay? So what I get is I seemingly, I get discounts on my groceries. I get the gas thing is attached to it. So you go to the pump and you get, however much money a gallon off of your gas, and I like that. I'm like, okay, you can have my information for that, because I'll take this other value that you're providing for me. What are we giving people who fill out these evaluations for us? We're getting their information. We are. We're getting it. So what are they getting? And don't say it's the learning, because they've already paid for that. Okay, they've already paid for that, the money for that. Now, what are they getting for the learning? I mean, for the evaluation information? Nothing. You ain't giving them nothing. Not a thing. So what happens is, and back to what my hypnosis teacher said was, evaluation information should be useful for me, not just for you as the provider of the learning. It should be valuable for me. I need to be learning something about me when I answer your evaluation questions, because this feedback is about me, right? I'm not giving feedback about the instructor. When I say, oh, the materials were terrible, or yeah, the instructor was engaging, or the instructor was horrible, I could not stand the way her voice was, and or whatever, that's about me. That's an opportunity for me to look at, okay, why am I responding that way? Why am I responding that way? We don't allow the learner to ask those types of questions. Okay. So, and that's not all. So it's learning about themselves. And I'll talk about this in a different video, because me and one of my colleagues, we were brainstorming about what other kinds of value, think again about the grocery loyalty card, could learners get from providing evaluation information, valuable evaluation information. All right. So again, the whole purpose of this was to again say, you cannot evaluate a person. All right. Now, with that in mind, what are you going to do to get the information that you feel you need in order to make decisions about what the instructor does, where the instructor goes, who they teach? What are you going to do to get that kind of information? And what kind of information is that? Okay. One thing you can do is ask the instructor evaluation questions. Seriously. Because if it's about me, I'm the instructor, I have evaluation questions too that I need to answer. Well, look at that. Isn't that novel? Novel idea. Now, what am I learning about myself as I answer these questions? What about my IDP as an instructor? Is that attached to the work that I'm doing? Can I use the classroom as my own classroom, my own environment for me to strengthen, practice my skills in some kind of way? Can I do? Is that possible? Let's think about these things a little differently than we typically do, because listen, we're missing out on so much because we're afraid or unable, or we just don't want to. think more broadly about learning and evaluation. Okay? You can do that. It's possible. You can think more broadly about it. It's absolutely possible, I promise. Okay, that's all I have for tonight on this subject. So again, if you have comments or questions, I think, yeah, it's just that one link I'm going to put down there. No, two. I'm going to put two links below the video so you can go and get further information about this stuff. But just think about it. You don't have to do anything different. Like, just think about it. Think about ways that you can be more evolved in the way that you're designing and evaluating the learning. Okay? All right. Good night, y'all.